And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Feel Inspired podcast. And it's a milestone episode today. It is episode 50. It is a big milestone for me as well to make it this far. All right. But
Brilliant,
anyway,
brilliant.
and today's a very special episode as well. Got a wonderful guest, an old friend of mine, and we've got a great topic as well to be discussing. But for anyone who's new to this, perhaps you're listening to the replay or on any of your favorite podcast platforms as well. Though my name is Amit Sodha, and like I said, this is the Feel Inspired podcast. My goal with this podcast has always been to create this platform where I get to inspire people in the same way that I've been inspired by all the things that I've ever read or heard or listened to or whatever it is. And so I wanted to recreate and do the same for everyone else out there as well. So I've got an amazing guest today, and we're continuing with the theme. Last time we talked about dating tips for men, but we're talking about how to avoid dating a narcissist today. And my very special guest today, she's an incredible soul. She's a clinical NLP hypnotherapist, coach, and author. And like I said, we've been in touch for quite a number of years, but I wanted to bring her on today because I think this is a very hot topic right now. And I think there's also a lot of confusion around this whole idea of what a narcissist is, because I think it's one of those things that's starting to get thrown around left, right, and center. We have to be careful with that as well, because we can end up saying that about people and kind of planting this label on them, but actually it's nothing could be further from the truth. It's just that your values clash. You just don't like each other. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're a narcissist. So it's good to get an idea of to understand what this means, what we can do about it if you've ended up in a situation where you have been in a pattern of dating that type of character over and over again. Then maybe today can help. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my fabulous, wonderful, amazing guest today. Her name is Maria McMahon, and she's also done something very special as well. She's going to be giving away, I think, 10 copies of her book as well. We're going to include the link a little bit later on. But welcome to the Feel Inspired podcast. First time, Maria. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much, Amit. Good to see you again. I love your content. You're always so inspiring and so enthusiastic. It's just always a pleasure to be in your company. So thank you so much for inviting me to come on and have a chat with you today. And congratulations on your 50th podcast. That's amazing.
I know that's not too shabby, eh? Not too shabby at all.
No, absolutely not. And you always put out such good content. So I'm really, really delighted to be a part of this with you today. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of it as well, and to have you here. So, I guess before we go too deep into the topic of narcissism and things like that, firstly, I'd love to I'll give you a chance to tell our listeners and our viewers and whoever else a little bit about you and how you got into this line of work. So, what led you to this point? Was it something specific for you? Did something happen? Or was it just that you saw people suffering with this and you decided that something needed to be done?
Right. Okay. Well, basically, very briefly, I trained as an NLP hypnotherapist way back, like when I was in my early 30s. And I've always been interested in, human psychology and helping people. And I was fascinated with the changes that people could get with NLP. So I did that for a few years in London. Then I went traveling, and it was not until 7 years ago I decided I finished with the corporate world. I wanted to get back into just online coaching, therapy, all of that. So I got back into it. And I was doing a lot of stuff with, hypnotherapy recordings, self-worth programs, all of that sort of thing. And then about 4 years ago, somebody contacted me and she said, I really need help. I've been dealing with a narcissist and I'm really, really struggling. I cannot get past this. I'm having terrible panic attacks and so on. So I knew like most people, I had an idea of what a narcissist was, but unless you scratch the surface, you don't really know. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, because most people think it's just, the loud, obnoxious, full of themselves type of person. And some of them are, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I did some work with her and immediately helped her to completely get over these panic attacks. I mean, she was so bad, she was hospitalized several times.
Wow, okay.
Narcissistic people with narcissistic personality disorder are incredibly dangerous, and the damage they do to people, it's horrendous. So we got her past that very quickly, thankfully, and she's still doing great. This is 4 years ago. I know her from when I lived in Abu Dhabi, and she's still doing well. And very shortly after that, another woman messaged me, and she found me via my books group, because I have a spiritual and self-help and wellness books group as well. And she messaged me and she said, please remove this man immediately from your group because he's a narcissist. And she said, I have personal experience with this guy and I can prove it. I can send you documentation. So I connected with this woman and she's amazing. She had her own group at the time and she has the most amazing story. She's also going to be doing a podcast about it herself. So I ended up working with her. She lives in Berlin and she said, I'd really like to work with you in person. And I said, well, come to Spain. I have a spare room, no problem. So she did. And at that point, I just thought, this is so interesting, this whole field of narcissistic personality disorder. So I started really, really researching it. And I just became quite obsessed with it. I read 100 books. I've watched 1,000 videos and podcasts. And I decided very quickly after getting involved with it that I wanted to focus a niche in that. And so I rebranded and I've been doing that ever since. And I work with men and women. There's a big misconception out there that it's only women that get abused, and it is not true. There are rampant female narcissists out there, and they do as much damage emotionally to men. So that's something I want to just make a point of. So that's it briefly in a nutshell. And just to update, a quick update, I have written 2 books, one which we're going to be talking a little bit about the flags today. The Top 50 Red Flags of Romantic Predators is the title of the book. I have a copy here.
Lovely.
And yeah, so I will be giving free copies today, but it will be digital copies. I want to point that out because I can't send printed ones. But I wanted to just get the information out there in a really simple format that these are the flags, because these people are very typical in how they behave initially, but you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So I wrote that book. I've also written one on healing, and I run 3 Facebook support groups, one exclusively for men, one for women, and a mixed one, which is focusing on parental alienation and co-parenting with a narcissist. So that's a quick update to bring us to where we are. Yeah.
Lovely. So we've got 2 main things to tackle today. Then, of course, one is the actual red flags, and then we could talk a little bit about the healing from it, and also how to spot it in advance so that you don't end up in the same situation that you have put yourself in, several times potentially. And I know from what people have told me, it's not something I deal with that often, but from what people have told me, they have ended up being in this position multiple times. And this is the thing, isn't it? Why do some people end up in a situation where they do end up with a narcissist type of personality over and over again? What is it about them specifically that they are putting this out there or attracting that type of individual?
There are several reasons, Amit, and I actually do talk about this in the book as well, like why did I attract a narcissist? One of the most common things is if you've had an abusive or dysfunctional childhood, that sets you up for attracting another narcissist later in life, because you see a pattern of dysfunctionality. It could be that a mother or a father is narcissistic. Whichever one is, then the other one is kind of the doormat. So you learn this behavior as a child because subconsciously you pick it all up and you accept it. So when you're later on in life, you get another person come into your life and they start to be a bit abusive. There's a familiarity with it. So you kind of think, well, this is normal. This is, you may not even know that there are relationships that function healthily. I've worked with people who've said, I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like until I started digging in and finding, So that's one reason. So a dysfunctional childhood is very, very much often a cause. Another very common thing is if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person, you are a magnet for narcissists, because they're looking for people that they can control and manipulate. And generally they're looking for people who are going to be kind and forgiving and who'll put up with them and try to understand them and try to love them and make everything better. And so if you're that type of a person, an empath, most of the people I've worked with have been empaths, it's amazing. So that's common. There's several other reasons. It's you could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Simple as that. Maybe you were fed up with life. Maybe you were recovering from a breakup of another relationship. Maybe you just fancied a fling and so it can happen for a number of reasons. Yeah, and it's something that people want to understand when they're trying to heal, especially if they have that pattern of repeating that behavior. You know, if they're people pleasers, they're codependent, again, they are magnets for narcissists. So it's really important that they start to understand the patterns and see where they're making the same mistakes. Because if they don't heal themselves, they're going to keep drawing those same people, attracting those same people to them. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think it's not just necessarily narcissists, but that type of personality, those healers as such, they're the ones who come to me the most as well, because their natural tendency is that they will attract that type of character, and not always a narcissist, but someone who's going to kind of take advantage of their nature. That is, they want to help people automatically.
Yeah.
And they find it difficult to switch that off. And there's one thing I kind of teach people is like, you can't, you've got, is what dating is one area of life where you've got to be kind of like ruthlessly selfish. And it's something you have to train yourself in, because it's, you can't go in there as the coach or the healer or anything else, because you'll set yourself up for harm. You know, a relationship is something very different to a coaching relationship, or a, you know, a healing relationship, or even a friendship to a certain degree as well. Because in that situation, you are going to extend yourself to be there for people. But in dating, especially the very early stages, you've got to be mindful about that. If you let that happen, you can end up falling for that trap and ending up in that cycle again and again and again. And I've seen it happen to people as well for God knows how long. You know, they've just been repeating that pattern for a number of years, and they find it so hard to break out of it.
Absolutely. And it's such a valid points that you said there, Amit, and I do discuss in the book as well, when you're out there dating, what to look for, and boundaries and deal breakers and core values, all of those things come into play. And you've got to really know what yours are and set those boundaries, and realize that if somebody smashes one of your boundaries earlier on, they are going to continue smashing through them, and they're going to end up destroying you. So it's a really good point that you've said that. Yeah.
It's like that quote, right? If you're upset by my boundaries, you're probably the reason I need them. And that's so true, right? You got,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and it is hard, because I remember I was always the people pleaser in the beginning, and so as a result, I ended up being the person who kept on getting crapped on by other people. So I'd end up, you know, befriending people, and then they'd end up telling me all about their relationships, and I would become the doormat for them. But it took a lot of work to get beyond that point, so that I could separate those two areas of my life and make dating exclusive. And it was just one separate area where I treated it and handled it very differently to everything else.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about this definition then, before we get to the handling of it, the healing of it. What
Okay.
what is a narcissist as well? Because I think I heard, I think it was Matthew Hussey was being interviewed by Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, and she was talking about this. And she said, you know, what is a narcissist? And he said it as well. He said it's one of these things that kind of everyone is a narcissist in this day and age, or everyone's been labeled as such.
Yeah.
And I think it's just one of these words that's getting thrown around a bit too much. So it's important for us to understand, being able to define it so that we can recognize it. So tell us, in the best possible layman terms, as anyone can understand, what is it? What does it
Okay.
mean? Who is a narcissist? Like, what type of character are
Absolutely.
you looking out for?
So narcissistic personality disorder, it's a cluster B mental disorder. It's on the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. I know it's a mouthful, but it is a recognized personality disorder. So it's a mental disorder. It's like, you know, you have borderline personality, you have histrionics, all of this. So narcissistic personality disorder, NPD for short, is a recognized personality disorder. It's characterized by 9 different traits. And if you want, I'll very quickly run through them, and then I'll make some comments about it. So the first one is that I've written it down. I've got it on a thing here, so I don't forget.
I was going to say
Right.
nothing a lot. Yeah, I hope you got notes.
Grandiose, number 1, grandiose sense of self-importance, you know, exaggerated achievement, tall tales, all of that sort of stuff, okay? Number 2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, brilliance, power, beauty, ideal love. Ludicrous. Number 3 is believes that he or she is special or unique and can only be understood by, you know, super special, unique people. They have this real sense of superiority over everyone. Number 4, Requires excessive admiration, and they do in spades. Number 5, they have profound sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations. You know, they expect favorable treatment regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Number 6 is they are interpersonally exploitative. So they will take advantage of other people, and boy, do they ever, just to achieve their own ends. Number 7 is lacks empathy, and I think this is way short because they actually don't have any empathy. And they cannot, you know, recognize and identify that other people have needs, feelings, and a right to those needs and feelings. Number 8 is they're envious of others. They can be or they believe everyone is envious of them. And number 9 is they show arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Now, those 9 traits are from the DSM-5. Only 5 of them need to be present for a diagnosis of NPD to be, you know, issued. What I think those 9 traits do kind of cover is the overt narcissist, you know, that vain, I'm God's gift to the world type of person. I think it falls horrendously short of the reality of what narcissistic personality really is. I think that covers about this much, when in reality, the spectrum is massive. You also have different types of narcissists. So you have overts. There's also a huge misconception out there, or misuse of the word covert narcissist. You'll hear that a lot. You'll see that a lot, especially when you start to dig into the whole world of narcissism. And there is something called a covert malignant narcissist. And you're talking then about people like Dirty John, if people have seen that series, you know, getting towards the psycho, people who would kill. That's real deep malignant. But all narcissists are covert. So you have the different types. So you have the overt, obvious ones. You also have the shy, vulnerable narcissist that nobody would suspect in a million years. They come across as, you know, shy or victim narcissist. And then you have the communal or the altruistic narcissist. And this is the person who's so generous, you know, to charities, and they'll show up for fundraisers, and they're like, oh, pillars of the community types. But all of them, then you have cerebral narcissists. They're highly intelligent and they act completely differently to someone who's a somatic narcissist. Somatics, you know, they're all about beauty, looking good, keeping fit, looking fabulous, looking sexy, all of that. So you have all these different types, but every one of them, regardless of which type, covertly abuse the person they're with. So it doesn't matter. They generally put on we call it the mask, you know, a mask when they're out and about in public, which is why they fool so many people, because they can be incredibly charming. But then when they're at home and the real self comes out, they are monsters. I call them monsters behind closed doors. So it's really important that people, especially people out there on the dating scene who are looking for love, because these, I mean, I've called it romantic predators for a reason, because they are predators. So it's really important that they look into narcissistic personality a bit more and know what to spot. And I have over 100 videos on YouTube, and I've talked about the 50 red flags just briefly, so that if people wanted to do that and just get more of an idea, because once you know it, you can't unknow it. And you just having that sense of, oh, is this maybe a narcissist? Just having that knowledge can protect you from falling from one, because most people don't even realize it, you know, until they go into the relationship and they're in too deep and the abuse has started and they don't know how to get out. And they start, you know, Googling it, and they figure out, oh my God, this is exactly me. This is a narcissist, you know. So it's really, really important to understand that there's a lot of depth to narcissistic personality disorder. It's not one size fits all. They come in all shapes and sizes, and they can be very, very, well, they are very cunning, very deceptive, incredibly manipulative. Does that help? Is that a good, clear explanation?
Yeah, that was really, I mean, the amazing thing is that there were so many different types. Like I wasn't even aware of half of these as well. Like, so it's quite phenomenal how deep this goes. But can I just say something fascinating? When you were reading that list, I was doing a bit of self-reflection as you were reading that list, and I see some of myself in every one of those aspects. So I'm guessing there has got to be a degree to which that someone crosses that threshold, and like you said, there's like got to be 5, right? At least 5 of them for them to
Yeah,
qualify as
yeah,
an NPD, right?
yeah, absolutely. I think, as I've said, I think this is woefully short, and we could all have some of those traits, but with a narcissist, and when you're looking to determine whether someone is or not, or has NPD, you're looking for lots of stuff. You're not taking any one thing. And when I go through the flags, it's something I would reiterate. Any one of these things on its own isn't necessarily a cause for concern. But if you start to see these flags adding up, then you could be in trouble. And narcissism is on a spectrum. So, there is something called healthy narcissism, which I think is also the completely wrong word for healthy self-esteem. We should have our boundaries to have self-respect, self-worth. So that's that end. But then if you go right over to the other end of the spectrum, you end up at, psychopaths and sociopaths and psychopaths at the far end of it. So some narcissists are worse than others. Like if you have the covert malignant, they're the ones that are really very, very, very nasty, and they can be very dangerous. So it is a spectrum. We can have some of these traits, but you're always looking for, it's more than one thing. How many of these flags are showing up when you start dating a new person? Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, right, it's often how it translates when they do enter a relationship. Because like you said, right, like I said, when you talked through that list, I was listening very intently, and I was like, yeah, there's a little bit of me there, a little bit of me there, a little bit of me there. And that's just me being completely honest. I think we all have some of those traits within us.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think obviously within the context of this subject, it's how those traits and that personality emerges in the relationship setting or in relationship to someone else, right? So let's stick with the dating thing, and so this leads on to our next point. So and this is where we cross over, right? So someone has these traits, but then within the context of a relationship or the beginnings of a relationship, it starts to emerge as a type of even subtle abuse. So this is where it's good to know. So what kind of abuse does this manifest as? What do they start doing to the other person? Like, what do they like? And is it something that's kind of that they're doing without even realizing they're doing, but they're just doing it anyway? Or is it something they're quite aware of and conscious of? And they continue because it gives them a sense of power.
They need the fuel. They all need what we call, well, it's narcissistic supply. It's that admiration, that adoration, that being the center of attention. They all need that. That's the lifeblood to a narcissist. Some of them are very aware of what they're doing. It depends on the level of intelligence, their knowledge, and various things. There's a guy called H.G. Tudor who's written like 60 odd books. He's got a fantastic blog. And if you think what I've said is complicated, that barely scratches the surface of it with what he's done. He's an amazing source. He's a self-aware narcissist.
Tell us the name again, by the way.
H.G. Tudor.
H.G. Tudor, right? Well, I'll make sure I add the name in as well.
I would definitely look him up for anyone who's interested. He goes really deep. So some of them are absolutely aware, but the fact is they don't really care what they're doing to people, because you can try to help them. You can try and get them to therapy. There is no cure. There is no known cure or treatment for narcissistic personality disorder, unless it's caught very, very early, which it isn't very often. There's no cure for it. The type of abuse, what I've done with the Red Flags book is I've done 50, and what I've got is 4 stages. So you've got flags that will show up in the early days. That is the dating, when you just meet someone, which is some of those we're going to talk about today. Then I do the flags that are likely to show up when you get a bit deeper into the relationship. Then when we get into the real abuse is when they start what we call the devaluing stage. And then there's the big red flags is the last section, where you're really suffering with trauma bonding, anxiety, constantly walking on eggshells. Your self-worth is in tatters. They can ruin you financially, spiritually, sexually, you name it. It's psychologically, physically, it's awful. So knowing what to look for is so important so that you don't ever get to that stage. And believe me, I have people in all of these groups, and I have probably more than 5,000 people in my groups who will attest that everything I'm saying is true. Everything I've written in these books is true because I've seen the experience of it and I work with people. So it's not to be taken lightly. And so does that answer your question? Because
Yeah, no, it does.
yeah.
It does. Yeah, and when you were speaking there as well, the Tinder Swindler came to mind a little bit as
Oh
well.
my God, yeah, I know. I'm always watching these things.
Yeah, yeah.
They're actually really good because they Netflix is hugely popular and there's more and more of these documentaries coming out and they're so informative because people are like, oh my God, I didn't know people like this, existed. These people are all narcissists. Inventing Anna is another one that was,
We just
there's
started watching it.
more, but they're all so good. But this is what these people are like. And they get away with it as well, which is just shocking. But I'm glad Netflix is bringing out more and more of these because people are really starting to understand a little bit better, Because the thing about narcissism is if you don't get involved with it yourself, how are you going to know about it? Or unless you're a therapist like me, you just don't know. So people go in and they... So can I, with that, talk about some of the red flags, yeah?
Yes, I was literally just about to say that. But what just before we do, I just wanted to say what fascinated me with what you said is about the cure. That really fascinates me that there is no cure as such. I wonder if that again is contextual here because, I wonder if there's people who've been through it, have been self-confessed narcissists, but have become self-aware, and as a result have done the self-work to then overcome that. So we'll come back to that though. That's an interesting subject in itself. But yes,
we could, yeah.
100%. I want to know about all these red flags now because obviously that's another big subject as well. Red flags, everyone's talking about them, but specifically when it comes to spotting narcissistic behavior, then take us through some of these important ones that people need to keep an eye out for.
Okay, so these ones I put together based on all the research I'd done, people I'd worked with, all the information I was learning in my groups over time. So they're the ones that come up again and again and again. It's not that they're the only ones, there are more, but this is the very common ones that are going to show up really early on. I have 19 in that stage, that early dating stage, but I'm going to cover, hopefully, if we've got time, 10 of them today. So the first red flag that is so important for everyone is to trust your intuition. So it's not trusting your intuition is flag number one. And the thing is, we all have intuition. We all know that we have an inner guidance. But what happens when you meet a narcissist is they are usually so charming and intoxicating that they kind of draw you in and you push your intuition to the side and you sort of think, oh, well, maybe I'm being picky, or maybe I'm just being too fussy, or, maybe it's just me, maybe I need to lighten up. So you make all these excuses to yourself when you see this behavior in the beginning. And one of the big flags that I will talk about is the love bombing. That's kind of what happens in the beginning, and it's overwhelming. So not trusting your instincts right in the beginning is really, really a huge mistake to make. Even if you don't actually fancy this person, and I've had several people say this, a lot of the times, the person's really hot and you're feeling, oh yeah, it's a really sexy guy or a really sexy woman, and but there are times when you don't even fancy them, but they have some way of mesmerizing you and just taking over. One of the women that I talked with, she said at first she said, I didn't even fancy him. I gave him a 2 out of 10, but I fell in love with being swept off my feet. And this is the thing, that they make you feel so good about yourself that is a high. That's intoxicating in itself. So that's the first flag, okay?
Okay.
I'm not going to go into too much detail in any of them. Obviously, in the book, I go into a lot more detail. On my YouTube videos, if anyone's interested, I go into a bit more detail. So flag number 2 is Judging a book by a cover, and we all know that expression, don't we? Don't judge a book by its cover. And it's really, really true in the case of narcissists, because they very often come across as incredibly charming and, good looking and well turned out and all of that. They can be incredibly good conversationalists. They know how to present themselves well. So it's very, very easy to fall for someone like that. They will often, if it could be the truth, but they will often lie about their professions. They'll lie about things, and you have no reason to disbelieve them. So you've got to be very careful in the beginning not to just believe everything and not be gullible and not take in everything and not think, oh, wow, this is the most gorgeous guy I've ever met in my life, or this is the most gorgeous woman I've ever met in my life. It's okay to think that, but you've also always got to be thinking, is this person really who they are, or is this person hiding something? And could this person be something other than what they're presenting to me? Now, with that said, and with all of these flags, what I said earlier is you're always looking for lots of the flags. Any one thing isn't enough. But with a narcissist, they will more flags will show up. So you don't want to be going out being cynical and thinking everyone in the world is going to be a narcissist, because that's not the case. But if you're the kind of person that knows you are possibly vulnerable because you are an empath, as we said, or you might be codependent or people pleasers, whatever, you need to be on your guard, so you know what you're looking out for. Yeah. So don't judge the book by its cover. Take some time to really get to know that person. Okay. And when they start the whole, love bombing thing, which we'll come to, that's a big, big red flag. So if that's happening and your gut is telling you, oh, something's going on here, listen to it. Okay. Now, the next one is powerful sexual attraction, which obviously it's nice when you meet someone and they're really hot and you're both really attracted to each other. But when it's a narcissist, particularly if it's a somatic narcissist, they are going to be really playing the sort of sex thing with you. They're going to be trying to get you into bed as quickly as possible so that they can, have amazing sex with you. And what happens then is because obviously sex creates a very powerful, connection, and all your hormones become involved, your estrogen and dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, and all these are having a party. So the problem with having sex very early on with someone you hardly know is that it really muddies the waters. Because the next day, we've probably all been there. All you can think about is, oh my God, what a night that was,
Yeah.
And everything else kind of pales into insignificance. So that will make you overlook even more stuff that you shouldn't be overlooking. So my advice is always don't rush into sex with somebody too early on in the relationship until you really know who you're dealing with, until you really feel, well, I haven't seen any red flags. This person seems really genuine. So I'm going to be ready. Yeah, let's take it to the next level. This isn't about censoring people having sex. It's just about, if you're vulnerable and you want to be, careful not to fall for the wrong type of person, then just, back off a bit. The other thing I also always advise early on in the dating game is to avoid alcohol, not to drink too much. We all know the stories of, we went out, we got drunk, we end up the next morning thinking, holy smoke, who's that? That's happened to so many people. So you don't want to drink too much. A glass of wine or two is okay, but just be careful. Just don't get yourself, smashed, because when you do, you will also be more likely to share things with this person that you wouldn't share, and that's emotionally and then physically. So you're leaving yourself wide open. So that's my advice there. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Oh, got plenty of time. Don't worry.
Got plenty of time. Okay. Now, red flag. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Where was I? What flag was that? That was sex, wasn't it? Powerful sex. Okay. So red flag number 4, love bombing.
Oh, yeah.
Idealization. If you've never heard of this, it's a really, really important one, because it's one that it's so easy to spot in the beginning if this person is a narcissist and they're really trying to get you involved with them. They will love bomb you, and they will do it with texting. They will do it with social media, like getting on your social media and, being all over you on, liking everything you like, and just really over the top. They will shower you with compliments, like you are the best thing since sliced bread is boring compared to how incredible you are, and they make you feel amazing. It's like, you're falling in love with yourself, and they really lay it on with a trowel, and they will, you will have texting and sexting nonstop, and you basically can't have a chance to even think straight. So they're trying to bowl you over, but they're also trying to keep you very much focused on them, so that you go about your day and you struggle to concentrate or think about anything else but them. And that's part of their controlling tactics that's happened right in the beginning. But they do it in the way that, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about you, and I just need to know what you're doing right now. And they'll keep this up all day and all night, even if you have, you say, right, I've got to be at work, I've got to be up early. They don't care. They will keep you on the phone till 4 o'clock in the morning. And then they will be messaging you again and again. And then they'll do things like, showing up at your workplace. And it's just all too much, over the top. So you've got to be aware of that. And you think, you've got to think, is this normal? Just sort of step back and take a deep breath and just say, isn't this just a bit too much? What's going on with this person, They will even tell you they love you the first night, the first time. They won't always, but I've heard it many, many times. It's not that uncommon. Oh, I love you.
Like you're just like the most amazing human being I've ever met, and I've never met anyone like you. Right? Two big ones. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they do. And you're my soulmate, and we have to be together, and we're destined to be together, and all this stuff. And people fall for it all the time. So you have to just step back and say, oh, hang on a minute, isn't this all a bit too much too soon? And doesn't this, if it feels this good, is it too good to be true? And we all know that's saying, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. And if it's a narcissist, then there's no probably about it. You will rue the day you ever got involved with this person. So that's number 4. Now, number 5, I call emotional seduction love bombing by a different name, because the love bombing, the typical overt, trying to get you into bed, all that sexual attraction, seduction I was talking about, that's common. But if you've got a vulnerable, cerebral narcissist, they're not necessarily that interested in sex. A lot of them are asexual, so they don't actually want to bother at all. But they will still be able to reel you in, because they're so good at reading people. So they mirror you, they match you, they make you feel like they really understand you, and they build this incredible bond, and they bring out your caring instincts. So you might think, oh, this is such a sweet woman, I just want to take care of her. Or you might think, this guy, oh, he's so sweet, I just love him, he's so adorable, and he's so vulnerable. But it's all a ploy. They're all going to get everything they can out of you ultimately. So the needy ones that aren't really interested in this physical side, but they're kind of, oh, I need you to be with me, I want to be with you all the time. They start very quickly wanting you to be with them, like every minute that you're free, and that becomes really suffocating really quickly. So you've got to be careful about those as well, because there's more than one way that they can trap you, that they can ensnare you. So again, just call time, just stand back and say, oh, hang on a minute, do I want somebody that I've got to protect and mother and stuff like that? You just need to stand back and say to yourself, oh, hang on a minute, not sure about this. Walk away and just think about it. Give yourself breathing space. It's always my advice.
Yeah.
Red flag number 6 is they will often seem to know a lot about you. Now, I'm not trying to scare people to death, but the fact is, and I know this from reading so many of H.G. Tudor's books, they as in narcissists, research people because they are looking for a specific type of person. So they will go onto your social media, They will check out who your friends are. And of course, on social media, we know we can learn so much about people because we have such an open sort of, this is me and this is where I ate dinner last night and this is what I'm doing. And there's so much information we put on Facebook. So it's very easy for a potential predator to figure all this stuff out about you. You know, what kind of music you like, who's your favorite band, all of this. So when they start talking to you, they might seem to be just, wow, you're thinking, wow, this is such a coincidence. You know, she loves such and such a band. I love that band too. And oh my God, she, you know, Sardinia is her favorite place to go on holiday. And all these coincidences will, and they seem like coincidences, but they're not, because this person has very probably been stalking you on social media so that they know all these things. And they do that so they can create this rapport with you, so that they seem to like everything you like, dislike everything you like. So you always want to be very suspicious if you're out on a date with someone and it's very early days of the dating, first or second date, and this amazing synchronicity seems to be going on. Just step back again, mentally step back and just say, oh, I wonder, has this person been researching me? You know, what's this person really up to? And in the book, I go into some more little sneaky ways that you can maybe find out a bit more about whether they're on the level or not, but that's in the book. So number 7 is, and this tends to be more for the overts, but they tend to be around more. So they brag and they boast and they name drop. Now, it's not that the vulnerable, quiet ones don't. They also do it, but they do it in a slightly different way. So they are the kind of people that will just exaggerate their achievements, exaggerate their own importance, which obviously ties into that trait that we mentioned earlier in the DSM-5. They can also be very obnoxious. So watching how they behave when you're out with them to service people in restaurants, for example, and they can't help themselves. This happened to a friend of mine here in Spain recently who dated 2 narcissists, one after the other. And he said, I can't believe it. Exactly what you said in your book is what happened. He said she was looking down her nose at the waiters as if they were dirt. And this is the kind of thing they'll do because they think everyone is beneath them. And someone who's serving them in a restaurant, they won't be polite. They can be really rude and obnoxious to them. And you think, oh, that's not, you know. So that's a big red flag if they're behaving like that. If they're, you know, boasting about, oh, they've got this and they've got a great house or they've got a great car or they've got, you know, fantastic jobs, or they're name dropping, you know, they've got Ed Sheeran on speed dial, and they say these things. Again, you need to sort of step back and think, is this person really genuine?
Hold on, Maria. I've got a call from Obama. 1 second. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's the kind of thing they do. You know? There are people out there who do this, because all of these, one of the Ed Sheeran was one of the women in my group who told me this. And she said, and for ages, because he was a musician, not a very well-known one, but he dabbled, you know, he could play a guitar. Oh yeah, I've got and he showed her on the phone, look, there's my mate Ed.
By the way, Barbara just left a comment on my profile page. My profile. She said HD Tutor has a series on the Tinder Swindler as well, actually. So, so worth checking out.
What was that about the Tinder?
Oh, sorry. HG Tudor has a series out on the Tinder Swindler as well.
Ah, right. Okay.
We'll look that up. I'll see if I can find it, and then we'll add the link as well into the notes later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so where were we? So bragging, boasting, name dropping. Take all that with a hefty pinch of salt, because generally people who are really successful and, you know, do live in big houses or drive fancy cars don't need to say, hey, I've got a fancy car, or hey, I live in a big mansion. They just don't do it. So just be a little bit suspicious if they do that. Red flag number 8 is that they want to know everything about you. So this is a little bit on the back end or the tail end of the love bombing. And they kind of bombard you with wanting to know everything about you. So they want to know about, you know, your life, your past loves, your sex life, your childhood, your relationships with family, your hopes, your dreams, your fears. They're just so fascinated by you, and they want all the nitty-gritty details. And again, this is really early on in the dating stages. This could be even on the first date. And it's not appropriate. But they kind of lean into you and they're like, oh my God, I just need to know everything about you. And what they'll often do is share stuff about themselves to get your confidence. Now, it may or may not be true, because they're pathological liars as well, as part of the makeup of who they are. So you cannot necessarily believe a thing that comes out of their mouth. But often they will say, oh, I had a terribly abusive childhood and my father was an alcoholic and yada, 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 sob story. They're doing that to get sympathy from you, but also to get your confidence. So then you think, that reciprocity, oh, well, he or she has just shared that with me, so now I need to share something personal. It's psychological manipulation.
I call it like sympathy attraction. It's people who you try and use sympathy to get someone to feel attracted to them, and actually most of the time it tends to backfire. But it's interesting, isn't it, what you mentioned as well, because there's just on that point specifically, like, how do you tell the difference between someone who's genuinely sharing and wanting to be vulnerable in front of you and tell you something honest, versus someone who's kind of trying to, elicit your confidence so that they, trust to kind of, get more out of you, so to speak?
That's a good question. And I think it's a combination of things. I think it's, how is the person stacked up with these flags in the very early days? Are you getting a feeling, and this comes back to trusting your gut, are you getting the feeling that this person is maybe a little bit more over the top, maybe not as genuine? Are you getting those feelings? So it's really about trusting your intuition around the whole thing. Thinking about what is appropriate to share when you first meet somebody. I think that's important. Generally early on, you don't share all your deepest, darkest, heartbreaking secrets with people. People have to earn your trust before you're ready to tell them that. So I think if somebody starts asking you that sort of stuff, or even telling you that sort of stuff really early on, I think you've just got to think, well, is that really appropriate? Much later down the line, when you've got to know the person, then fair enough. I think
I found it quite often coupled, like just exactly this point, coupled with the reason why I'm so busy and can't always, be around for you. And, I'm not always around for you, but when I call, you better answer type of thing as well. It's that type of, one-way relationship, one-way transaction where it's just, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I've got so much going on. I've just told you my life story, how busy I am because I've got, to look after this, do this, do that. So I won't always be in touch. I want to always be able to take your calls. But if I call, you better answer. I better see the blue ticks. I see that coupled together so much.
Yeah. And the dynamic there is indicative that the power is all with the one person, which means that person is very, very possibly a narcissist, because it is one set of rules for them and completely different set of rules for the other person. So exactly what you said there exemplifies that. It really does. Yeah.
I think that's a good line to kind of summarize some of this. Is one rule for them and a separate rule for them. Yeah, that's a really good one. I'll make a note of that as well. We'll add this into the show notes as well.
Yeah. Okay. So if they want to know too much about you and they're sharing too much information too early on, just step back, keep your guard up, and just don't be prepared to spill your emotional stuff too soon, because they haven't earned the right to know that about you. And you don't necessarily want to know all that stuff about them this early on either. It's just not proper etiquette. It's not proper social etiquette. Okay. And it is always about control and manipulation. Now, on the other side of it, and again, this tends to be more about the overt narcissist, but it can also be the vulnerable one. They don't want to know anything about you. You could actually spend a whole evening dating with some person and they don't ask you a single thing about yourself. It's all me. And they'll do things like criticize the wine, or they'll talk about the wine as if they're, sommeliers and they're experts in it. Or they would do things like order a meal for you, even though they have no idea what you like to eat. Oh, no, you must have this. Trust me, I know better. So they can be like really obnoxious. And I know someone who was with a man who was exactly like this. And she said it was unbelievable. She said, I sat there shell-shocked while he ordered the wine for me, ordered my dinner for me without even asking me what I wanted. And she said, and I thought, this is the most obnoxious person I've ever met in my life. I'm never going to see this person again. She caught herself at a loose end one weekend. He happened to call her and she said, oh, I'm not doing anything. Okay. That was it. Start of a narcissistic relationship that she paid very, very dearly for. So, it's complicated how I said, what was it about this person that made you go back to him? And she said, I don't know. There was just something compelling about him. And the next thing I knew, I was in so deep, I couldn't get out. So just because they're obnoxious in the beginning and you think, oh my God, that, the best thing is to block them and delete their number so that they cannot contact you again. Okay. So very, very self-absorbed, very, not interested. So my advice with this is always, don't mistake all this arrogance for confidence or chivalry or whatever, and just cut the cord on that, block them and be done with it. Now, my number 10, which I'm not going to talk about, I decided number 11 was a bit more juicy for this one.
Okay.
Number 10 very quickly is that, this person is on their own. Maybe you see this person in a bar and you think, wow, he's hot, or wow, she's hot. This is not to say that there aren't genuinely lots of wonderful, good-looking, sexy, gorgeous people out there who are genuine and looking for love and are nice people. But I'm just saying all of this is within the context of if you are trying to spot a narcissist. So you see someone and they look amazing and you've got to kind of think, why are they on their own? And that, my next flag that I talk about, and I want to quickly talk about, is if they're alone and you get talking to them or you're on a first date, it's normal to start, oh, well, were you married? You generally ask a few light questions about previous relationships. How do they talk about their exes? Because narcissists, 9 times out of 10, will trash talk their exes. He or she will have been abusive, crazy, jealous, unhinged, a stalker, or any other kind of negative description you can come up with. So you've got to be careful about that, because a normal person, if they've broken up with someone, they'll generally say, oh, yeah, I was married for a few years, but it didn't work out. Or, yeah, we broke up, but, things came to an end. They won't go into immediately character assassination of their ex. So if they do that, huge red flag. And you've got to think, wow, if they're going to talk about their exes like that, maybe one day they'll talk about me like that if I was to get involved with this person. And this is hands down what happens with a narcissist. The vulnerable ones may take a slightly different tack, in which they play the hurt, rejected, brokenhearted. I mean, I loved her so much and she left me. And you kind of want to mother them and pick up the pieces, that sort of thing. You've got to be very careful about that too, because you don't want someone sitting there crying like a wet weekend over their ex. So that's another little red flag. And the other thing is also to be careful about, it's not as common, but you can occasionally get them where they talk about their ex as if he or she was, a god or a goddess on this pedestal that is completely unattainable, unreachable. And what they will generally do, this can happen if they really wanted to stay with that person. Maybe they were discarded. The reasons are quite complicated, but they will then start to very quickly compare you against that person.
I was just about to say, are they doing that to try and make that, you feel inadequate?
Yeah,
or lower your self-esteem?
Yeah. So all these flags in the beginning, so that's 11, so I'm not going to talk anymore. All these in the beginning, you have to watch out for them, because if you don't, and there are several more, but we don't have time to go through them, you will get into the next stage where more flags, and this is where it starts to go deeper and get more complicated, and where the abuse starts. And then it just is a downhill spiral all the way until you are, completely messed up. And either they discard you and go off with someone else, which is very common, or you get out, in which case, good on you if you do. If anyone's watching who's got out of one of these relationships, I say yes, bravo. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's all going to be roses, because there is something very well known in the circle of narcissistic abuse called smear campaigns. And they'll do this even if they discard you, they will then go out, they'll set out to make everyone think that you are the worst person on the planet, that you were the abusive one, that you're the psycho. They lie unbelievably. I mean, they will even do things like, it's just reprehensible, accuse one parent of sexually abusing their own children. And I see this a lot in my groups. It's happened to so many people. It's appalling. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
I forgot to quit my WhatsApp. I was waiting for you, so I didn't quit it.
That's all right. Don't worry.
They will do really, really vile things. And I see this all the time in my group. So I know this is happening all the time. They will they'll accuse you of abuse. They will get protection orders against you when it's completely the other way around. Mm-hmm. It's just really, really warped what they do. So this is why it's so important to learn what to look for, so that you don't get to those later stages where your life is a complete mess. Yeah. So I think I'll stop now. Are we good?
No, I think, honestly, I'm not just saying this, Maria, as well, like not just love bombing you, but I think this has been one of the most insightful podcasts I've done, because I actually had no idea how deep this subject went. Like, I genuinely was always a surface skimmer of this subject, but it's incredible. Like what you said, and of all the people I've coached or worked with over the years, like some of this is starting to ring true even more now. Like I wouldn't have necessarily labeled it that way, but like when you say it, that some of the pieces just fell into place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. It's just genuinely incredible how deep it goes. But I think the key message from all of this, and using these red flags, or trying to kind of spot these red flags, is that you don't want to be on the tail end of this. You want to be able to spot it as early as possible, because I see it day in, day out, people trying to recover from experiences like this, and it's hard. It is hard work. It's not easy, and it's better just to avoid the pain in the beginning, as hard as it may be. And this is where I think having a few good friends or confidants, or even speaking with a coach in the early stages of your relationship to get some idea. If you, one of the big things I was going to mention, by the way, as you were talking, that was that you went through a whole list of red flags, but it's amazing how many people will ignore or negate some of those red flags. They'll try and rationalize them. I mean, that's a whole other subject for another day, but it's amazing how many people will do that. They will think, like, one of my first questions when I coach people is, what was the first thought you had, or what was the first red flag thought that you had? And it was usually very early on, but they kind of just, buried it away. And then they just thought, it was probably just nothing really. And because of that one thought that they decided to bury away, that's when it spiraled and went out of control. And I think this is why it's so important that if you can make yourself aware of some of these red flags, and just to be armored and ready for these situations if they arise, and then you're in a better position.
That's it. Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I'm not joking. This has been so insightful. I really genuinely had no idea it went this deep.
And we've barely scratched the surface, Amit.
Yeah, I know. I could tell. I know, and I think there's a lot more to discuss. And I think we'll definitely do it. We're 100% going to do a part 2 to this, because
I'd love to.
It's such a big thing at the moment as well. And let's face it, even more so with digital online dating, it's probably even worse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I completely.
That's one of the reasons I was so excited to speak with you and do this, because you obviously are in the dating niche. You're a dating coach, so you knowing this, as you said, even as I was talking, little cogs are starting to fall into place. You'll be amazed once you know how quickly you can recognize it, and you'll be able to help your clients as well. Say, hey, watch out for this, because this person could be a narcissist. Or maybe your ex is a narcissist. Knowledge is power, and the more we can spread it, Amit, the better. More people that can get protected.
Too right. Amen. That's what I say to that. And so two main follow-up questions. One, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to speak to you or connect with you or get into one of your groups or anything like that? Is that possible? And what's your prime point of contact?
Probably the easiest way would be to just message me in Facebook. If you just put Maria McMahon Narcissistic Abuse Healing, my name and Narcissistic Abuse will come up. That will take you to my main page, and anyone can just message me from there. And then I can send them links for my groups, because I have
Brilliant.
three different groups.
And of course, we've got the 10 books to give away as well. So
Yes,
I will
we have.
definitely I will include the link in the podcast as it's uploaded to all the podcast platforms as well.
Yeah.
So definitely
Okay.
be sending that out. So I just
All right,
wanted to
lovely,
say,
yeah.
a huge thank you for coming on today and sharing all this valuable information and enlightening me hugely
It's been my
today.
pleasure, Amit, and I would really love to talk to you again and talk more about this, because it is such a vast subject. You know, we could do loads of podcasts over the coming year, whenever your schedule permits. Yeah,
And of course, the biggest element of this, healing from something like this as well, because it's a
oh
huge,
my
huge thing.
goodness, yeah, massively. I've even written a book on that, on how to heal. That's like on my website, if anyone's interested. My website is narcissisticabuse-healing.com. That book is on there, because there's so many people suffering, But joining a support group makes a huge difference. You know, or I've got so many people in my groups, particularly the guys and my women's group, who say, this group has been a lifesaver. This group has literally saved my life. And it's, so even if, you know, you can't afford to come and work with a therapist, you can't come, you know, don't want to get therapy, come in and get some support, because you need to know you're not alone. There are other people who know exactly what you're going through, and it's just a relief to know that as a starting point. And I have really fantastic admin teams in both my women's group and my men's group. They really look out for everyone. They offer some incredible support as well. So just, you know, don't be shy. Come in and join us, and we'll do our best to support you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say as well, thank you to Cherie and Marion, I think it is as well. And a few other
Hi, Marion. Yes, Marion.
yeah,
I know Marion.
thank you for sharing your comments and your experiences with this as well. It's good to know as well, for other people to learn from what you've been through, to help them as well. So Maria, I just wanted to say huge thank you for being my milestone guest, my 50th
congratulations
episode.
again. Yeah,
I think this was definitely ended up being a worthwhile episode as well. It's been one of my favorite episodes. So I wanted to say thank you, and we'll definitely speak again. And to everyone else listening or watching the replay or whatever, we'll include all the links so you can connect with Maria, and of course to the book as well, so you can grab yourself a free copy if you want. Get that quickly. And aside from that, Maria,
10
one more
copies.
time. Thank you so much again for your time. It's absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure, Amit. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to next time.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, I think, like you said, I think you've awakened me completely onto how vast the subject is and needs to be discussed. So I appreciate that. So, once again, thank you very much. Stay on with me while we end the broadcast. But to everyone else, thank you for joining us on the Feel Inspired podcast. I'll be back for episode 51 very, very soon. Ciao.